What's up, guys? It's Coach Neil with the Playmakers Lightning Program. Today, I want to talk to all the youth coaches out there and give y'all a breakdown of a simplified version of a practice schedule and some things you can start implementing now, today, in your practice schedule that's not going to take away from your practices, that's going to help your athletes to get faster, to maintain their speed. So let's say you're a high school athlete and you had a hardcore off-season program. This is going to make sure that you maintain your speed throughout the course of the season. Or if you're a youth athlete, how to maintain speed and also to work on some speed development stuff while also still working on skill development as well. One of the biggest challenges I see for youth coaches is the lack of time they have with their athletes. So there's this kind of underlying feeling that as soon as they get out on the field, they got to hit the ground running, start working X's and O's, running plays, whatever it is, they feel like they got to start doing all the tactical stuff. But let me tell you, if you start to implement these things right here, this is going to go pay huge dividends into your normal practice schedule. So whenever y'all do get to the X's and O's and tactical stuff, your athlete's going to be dialed in and ready to get the most bang for your buck. So a real simplified version of the practice schedule is going to look like this. You're going to start out with a dynamic warm-up. Your dynamic warm-up is going to take anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes. Then you're going to jump into your speed and skill training, which is also going to take about 8 to 12 minutes. So we're looking at these two things taking tops 20 minutes. So you're looking at, if you have an hour long with your athletes, 20 minutes devoted to dynamic warm-up, speed and skill training, and then you have 40 minutes to work whatever your normal practice schedule is. And again, I'm telling you, you start to use these things, your athletes are going to get a lot more from your normal practice schedule. So if there's anything that you leave this video with, it's the importance of a dynamic warm-up. Now, a lot of coaches think that when they have young athletes, they don't need to work so much on getting warmed up because they don't have the musculature to injure themselves. That's not true, first and foremost. But secondly, kids come in, let's be honest, no matter how young they are, there are a lot of distractions out there, whether it's life, school, Fortnite, friends, girls, whatever's going on in their lives. So when they come on the practice field, most of them are already distracted, aren't really dialed in. So the dynamic warm-up is a time to not only get them warmed up in their physical bodies, but to get their central nervous system turned on so they're wired and ready to get into practice. So the dynamic warm-up, I'm actually going to include a link on how to follow a dynamic warm-up. It's going to give you some movements on some things to implement with your youth athletes. And also from an organizational standpoint, it's going to help your athletes to get in an organized fashion. So whenever you do start your practice, y'all are ready to roll. It's not like chaos where everybody's all over the place. Kids aren't paying attention. Little Jimmy's playing with the rocks over here. Everybody's dialed in and ready to go. From there, you're going to get into your speed and skill training. Again, speed and skill training is going to take about 8 to 12 minutes. And the reason why it's so important to do your speed and skill training following your dynamic warm-up is because that's when your athletes are their freshest. Not only from a physical standpoint, but neurologically, that's when they're at their freshness as well. So this diagram here is going to show you so this here is going to be your warm-up, your dynamic warm-up time. This is going to be that speed and skill window that's between the warm-up and the normal practice schedule. Not only is this time the most preferable time to do your speed and skill training, it is the only time to do it. If you try to do it after this, like a lot of coaches think that they can line up their players on the line and do speed work at the end of a practice, really all you're working on is work capacity, and even that's arguable. And what I mean by work capacity is just strictly conditioning work. So if you want to do some speed training, it's got to be done right here in this window. I'm going to show you why. So if you look at this, the solid line here, that represents your fatigue level, your athlete's fatigue level. As they're going through the warm-up, they stay pretty steady, but as they start to get into the speed skill window and start to get into normal practice, their fatigue's going up. The dotted line represents their speed performance. So again, they're staying pretty normal throughout their warm-up. Their peak is right here in this window, following that 8 to 12 minute mark after their warm-up. Once they get to this part, it starts to go downhill from here. So if you try to do anything outside of this 20-minute window here in the midst of the practice or at the end of the practice, you're basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're just not doing your athletes any good when it comes to speed work. And the reason why, I'm not going to go too in-depth with it, but there's what's called the anaerobic phosphagen system. When you start to get outside of that system, you start to work more glycolytic, a lot of different energy systems. But if we're talking about just strictly speed, you want to stay in that anaerobic phosphagen system. And that's another part of it here that's going to get into your reps and rest when it comes to your speed work. So it's only going to be 8 to 12 minutes. So you're not doing a lot of reps here. And there's also a couple of different ways that you can do it. When you're talking about the anaerobic phosphagen system, you want to stay in about a 3 to 7 second window when you're talking about your sprint work. So we don't need them doing 30-second sprints, 15-second sprints. Anything 7 seconds or under, they're staying in the anaerobic phosphagen system. So you can do 6 to 8 reps of 3-second sprints with your athletes where they're doing sprints for 3 seconds. And then the rest interval, the work to rest ratio is going to be a 1 to 10. So let's say I do 3 seconds of sprint work. They're going to take 30 seconds to 45 seconds to rest and recover. Now that rest and recovery time, you may be saying, well, I'm losing time with my athletes there. That's when you're going to do your skill work. So if I have a lacrosse player, when they're doing their rest intervals, they can be doing stick work. If I have a soccer player, when he's resting, he can be doing footwork stuff, dribbling. If I'm working with a baseball player, they can be doing hand-eye coordination type stuff. If I'm working with a football player, we're going to be doing ball drills. So there's no lost time. You're not wasting any time. There's no time that's wasted. Your rest time is even being utilized. Now, if you're going to be doing the 5-second sprints, you want to go about 5 to 7 reps with 45 seconds to 75 seconds rest. And if you're going to do a 7-second sprint, about 4 to 6 reps, 70 seconds to 110 seconds of rest. And the reason why you need to take that long rest interval is because you want to make sure you give your athletes plenty of time to recover. Because again, if they aren't fully recovered, they're not working in that anaerobic phosphagen system, and they're not going to get any faster. So if a fatigued athlete is not going to be able to get any faster, you're going to get into a completely different energy system. And if you want to be working glycolytic, I understand that. That's a whole different ballgame. But if we're talking about just strictly from the standpoint of speed and wanting to maintain speed for your athletes, you got to stay in this 3 to 7 second window with ample rest and recovery time while still doing your skill training, okay? And then once you finish up with your speed and skill training, again, 8 to 12 minutes, you can get into your normal practice schedule. And I guarantee by the time you get to that last 40 minutes that you have with your athletes, they're going to be much more dialed in, ready to work X's and O's, and a lot more able to absorb the material that you're bringing their way. All right, guys. So that's just some tips on how to implement speed training in your practice schedule, even with a limited amount of time with your athletes. So be on the lookout. We're going to be doing weekly videos. I'm going to start doing some live videos. That way you can put questions out there, and I'm going to answer any questions that you have in regard to youth athlete training.